Unit 3 Theory and Paradigm. Contents 3.1 Introduction, 3.2 Sociological Theories, 3.3 Classical Sociological Theories, 3.4 Law of Three Stages, 3.5 Marxian Ideology, 3.6 Weberian Ideology, 3.7 Parson's Actions Theory, 3.8 Recent Advances in Sociological Theories, 3.9 The Concept of Paradigm, 3.10 Conclusion, and 3.11 Further Reading. The learning objective is, after having studied this unit, you should be able to discuss the meaning of theory, compare the contributions of Marx, Durkheim and Weber to social theory, describe classical and contemporary theories. We'll start with chapter 3.1 Introduction. In simple words, theory refers to the explanation of general principles of an art or science which is constructed with practice. It is true that on the basis of practice we derive certain rules, and at times we are able to separate these rules from whatever we have seen in practice. Thus, we begin to differentiate between theory and practice. Theory is generally helpful in explaining practice. Theory refers to the much higher level of abstraction, whereas practice to the empirical situation. If we look at the relationship between theory and practice, then broadly speaking, there emerge two possibilities, like theory and practice might be seen as quite distinct from each other, and theory and practice might be conceived as complementary to each other. According to the first point of view, it seems necessary to make a distinction between theory and practice. Thus, we come across the statements like, it is a very good idea in theory, but in practice it just might not work. According to this point of view, theory and practice are two quite different things. According to the second point of view, it appears that theory and practice are not two different things but can help in understanding each other. From our point of view, although it is important to understand the difference between theory and practice, but there is a need to see the relationship between the two. In fact, both theory and practice constitute a whole which could well be examined in its own right. However, all this concerns with the general understanding of the term theory, which is often contrasted with practice. But in the area of logic and philosophy, the term theory has been treated in a slightly different way. Accordingly, theory refers to a set of interrelated propositions. Proposition refers to the statement which would be proved either true or false. Here the emphasis should be given to the nature of the statement itself, which bears the quality of being proved true or false. In our daily life experiences, we come across such statements which could neither be proved true nor false. Such statements are to be kept out of the purview of proposition as well as theory. In the process of theory building, it seems necessary to formulate propositions carefully. Hence, the proposition must be formulated in such a way so that it bears the quality of being falsified. Such an approach is very much helpful in formulating not only sociological theories but also reflects its required scientific status. The basic quality of scientific research is that it progresses forward through the process of falsification. It means that in the light of new data, the existing theories are tested again and again. Till these existing theories are found capable of explaining the data, they don't face any kind of challenge to them. But if these theories fail to explain the new data, they begin to be questioned. The community of scientists is busy in continuously examining these existing theories in the light of new data. The moment these existing theories fail to explain the new data, these theories are put under a question mark, and sometimes these theories can be rejected, also paving the way for new theories to take their place. Rejection of the existing theories is known as falsification, and scientific research proceeds ahead. And scientific research proceeds ahead through this process. Here we would like to return back to our original question concerning the structure of theory itself. As discussed earlier, any theory is composed of a certain number of interrelated propositions. These propositions normally displace the condition that they could be falsified, and this very condition of propositions bring them on the track of scientific research. Thus, before constructing any proposition, we must ensure that it fulfills the condition of falsifiability so that it could be accommodated well in the theory. After this, we shall try to understand the nature, meaning, and type of sociological theories. 3.2 Sociological Theories. Broadly speaking, the discussion on the nature, meaning, and types of sociological theory could be divided into 5 parts. In the first part, we shall try to understand the nature and meaning of the sociological theories during its classical age or period. Considerable amount of work was done by the pioneers of sociology during this period to establish the credentials of the discipline. Sociology could well emerge as a separate discipline only due to the great efforts made by prominent scholars in its classical age. Next, in the second part, we shall discuss about the nature and types of contemporary sociological theory. In fact, this period reflects to the time when the subject sociology could come out of its classical period, both chronologically as well as conceptually. During this period, certain important advances were made in sociology, and some of the shortcomings of the classical period were also addressed too. In the third part, there is a discussion on the recent advances made in sociological theories. Here we come to see of sociology not only emerging as a new discipline but also maturing as a subject. During this period, sociology got established as an important, mature, and independent subject having its own identity. Next, in the fourth section, we shall come to know about theories and perspective in sociology that characterize this subject with some new efforts and rigor, and here we shall see how several doubts over the nature and the types of sociological theories were clarified. After this, in the fifth part, we shall examine how certain challenges were put forward before the sociological theory and how it responded to such problems and challenges. But one point we can be added here, that although sociological theory as it exists today has been able to overcome many obstacles and problems in its own way, but nevertheless this has never been an easy task to do so. 3.3 Classical Sociological Theories. The period of classical sociology belongs to the era when sociology emerged as a new discipline with the one central assertion that the scientific study of society is possible. Prior to that period, philosophers, intellectuals as well as laymen thought of and conceived of society in their own ways, but the science of society could not emerge out. Philosophers' reflections, literary romanticism and criticism, and People's own individual conceptions about society had been the characteristics of the era prior to the emergence of sociology. Although intellectuals belong to different streams of thought, as well as common people have been reflected upon the nature of society, but their efforts were primarily individual efforts. On the other hand, society had existed for a long duration, which displayed its own internal statistics and dynamics. How does society behave as an entity in itself? How can it be studied scientifically? Can it be done? If yes, then how? All such questions dominated the earlier era in the development of sociological theory. This era belongs to what is today known as classical sociological theory. The following discussion refers to the same. The term sociology was coined by Auguste Comte in 1798-1857, a French sociologist and philosopher. He is also known as father of sociology, although he has made some significant contribution to the subject, a part of which shall be discussed here too, but the most creditable work done by him related to his efforts in establishing sociology as a scientific as well as an independent discipline. Before him, instead of sociology, we rather had philosophy, literature, and art, though which reflections on science, society were used to be made. Thus, in other words, how sociology could be conceived of philosophically, literally, or through art had been the only available ways and tools to reflect upon society. The modern method of scientific analysis of society, as suggested by Auguste Comte, was not just available before him. Therefore, the contribution of Auguste Comte must be seen as a path-breaking one, helping to establish sociology as a new and independent discipline in its own right. Auguste Comte, in short, discussed at length, of course philosophically, to argue that the scientific study of society is possible, and when such efforts succeeded, the new subject would be known as sociology. What we must realize at the moment is that the simple fact that this had been never been an easy task. After establishing sociology as a new and independent scientific discipline, Auguste Comte and some of his contributions to it, Auguste Comte's own contribution to the subject sociology are referred to, although briefly, in the following session. 3.4 Law of Three Stages. Having established sociology as a separate and independent discipline, Auguste Comte divided sociology into two parts known as social statistics and social dynamics. Former dealing with the questions of equilibrium in society, and the later with the problems of change in human society. Auguste Comte has also referred to hierarchy of sciences like astronomy, mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and sociology. He was of the opinion that sociology can be reduced to other sciences, be it mathematics, especially statistics, biology, or political economy. Auguste has also talked about the law of three stages, namely theological, metaphysical, and scientific. According to him, every society passes through these three stages. In the theological stage, all the explanation concerning the events happening in nature and were attributed to God, who was supposed to be in full command of the situation. The second state, that is metaphysical, refers to the transitional stage where neither as the events takes place in the nature were considered neither as a supernatural act nor as based upon scientific explanation. This sort of transitional stage existed somewhere around 14th century. The third stage is known as scientific stage, where neither theological or metaphysical sort of explanation about society are considered sufficient. In the scientific stage of society, the explanations are examined rigorously and no explanation is considered as final one. Each explanation is considered as valid explanation only for the time being until a better explanation arrives on the scene. Auguste Comte believed that scientific methods would be applied for the study of society as well. The assertions like that one, although look simple, but it actually contains an important philosophy widely known as positivism. It was the philosophy of positivism which dominated the academic scene not only in France but over the entire Europe. In fact, the name of Auguste Comte has been associated with the philosophy in which the way that it is sometimes considered as the most is the only important contribution that he had made, as it cut across the geological boundaries of France and the academic limit of the discipline of sociology. The scholars from some other disciplines have commented widely on the notion of positivism. Auguste Comte suggested that his scientific method for the study of society would be based upon comparison, observation, and experiment. Auguste Comte has explained this and allied concepts in detail, but in short, it could be said that he was able to establish sociology as a new scientific as well as an independent subject. Although it was Auguste Comte who had made the earlier but essential beginning, it was Émile Durkheim who carried forward the fate of sociology by providing it new strides. His contribution to sociological theories is discussed next. Box 3.1, Durkheimian approach. Emile Durkheim, 1858 to 1917, a prominent sociologist from France, continued with the tradition of positivism established by his predecessor, following countryman and sociologist Auguste Comte. In a sense, we can say that Emile Durkheim continued from where Auguste Comte has left. Durkheim was still grasping with the questions like whether it was possible to apply the laws of natural sciences for the scientific study of society or not, and his answers to these questions was surely in the alternative. Emile Durkheim went ahead and virtually demonstrated how could it actually be done. He celebrated his sociological approach in his book, The Rules of Sociological Method. Although his books deals with some of the complicated details regarding what according to him would be the sociological approach in future, but one illustrations might be given here. Durkheim's method of social analysis emphasizes on the study of what he call it social fact. His discussions on social facts not only clarifies his methodological as well as theoretical formulations, but also helps in establishing sociology as a new important and independent scientific discipline. In fact, we can say that the first series sociological formulation in the history of subject begins with Durkheim's detailed treatment of the idea of social fact. His other formulations like the division of labor in society, the study of suicide, the notion of elementary form of neighbor's life, and the views of education and sociology are all concerned with the formulations built around social facts. We shall briefly attempt to understand some of the issues related to the notion and methodology concerned with the formula of sociological fact. According to Durkheim, social fact are ways of feeling, thinking, and acting commonly spreading among the people externally to individual and exercising a constant constraint upon him. This quite compact notion might appear difficult to understand and comprehend, but we shall attempt to explain some of the complex issues related to it. These social facts are different from facts concerning to us the individuals or the psychological level. Accordingly, Durkheim has also clarified that these social facts are external and exercise constraints upon individuals. According to him, we can identify these social facts when we attempt to go against them. Some of the sociological facts identified Durkheim himself in his various research work are like rate of crime, rate of suicide, division of labor in society and religion. How to sorry, how to use this sociological fact for the purpose of social analysis. In this context, Durkheim has given two clues. One, he suggests that social facts should be treated as things, and two, one social fact must be explained with another social fact preceding it. In this way, Durkheim has tried to achieve mainly two objectives. One, to ensure that the sociology virtually becomes a scientific discipline, and two, to take care that sociology remains as an irreducible subject and doesn't split into several parts of being to other subjects. Durkheim had also referred to normal and pathological aspect of society in this context. Durkheim approach regarding how to deal with the various theoretical and methodological issues would be seen in this book, The Rules of Sociological Method, in detail. After understanding the theoretical contributions and Emily Durkheim, we shall try to explain the efforts of yet another pioneering scholar, Karl Marx. Karl Marx, 1818-1883, was a philosopher, social scientist, as well as sociologist from Germany. The academic scholarship of Karl Marx is widely known throughout the world. Although Marx attempted to solve several academic problems, he never claimed to be a sociologist. What is today known as the Marxist sociology is based on his various formulations that are basically sociological in nature. In other words, we have to find out or make out the sociological context from his writing. This additional task has been done by the sociologist later stages. Marx theoretical formulation that were basic for him and usable for sociologists are referred here. Some of the basic formulations of Marx include historical materialism, classes and class struggles, theory of surplus value and alienation. Marx's formulations provide a departure from the earlier discussed engagements for sociological analysis. Marx's theory was also used as a political ideology by various left-side political parties of the world, and a sizable part of the world has been under the rule of the communist parties of the world till recently. In and around 1989, several political systems in different countries belonging to the Second World collapsed at the end of the Cold War period between the two then existing superpower countries. All such countries had practiced Marx's theoretical formulation and their political guidelines. Marx's theoretical formulations reflect a departure from the ones by the previously discussed authors by exhibiting one major point. Marx's method includes the principles of dialectics, which was not discussed by any of the sociologists earlier. As in principle, the use of the notions of dialectics was not an entirely a few discovery by Marx. It was used earlier by his fellow countryman G.W.F. Hegel. What was significant and new in Marx's theoretical formulation was materialistic interpretations of society with the help of dialectical method. And in the case of Hegel, he saw the progress of society through idealism achieved through dialectics. In the case of Matrix, the progress of society was possible through materialistic dialectics. Another significant departure in the writings of Marx was his emphasis on the historical method. When the principle of dialectics was applied for the study of history, it was called historical materialism. Materialistic interpretations of society mainly include the social situations which helps in shaping up the idea of people. At some place, the notion of historical materialism has been used interchangeably with that of dialectical materialism. Marx's emphasis on historic and dialectics was also related to his formulations of classes and the class struggles. Karl Marx, along with his academic collaborator and lifelong friend Friedrich Engels, had clarified that all the known periods of history up to present time could be seen as having class struggles. For example, according to Marx and Engels, in the slave society we have classes like masters and slaves. In the feudal society there were feudal lords and serfs, and in the capitalistic society we have capitalists and workers. These are the main classes struggling against each other for the sake of ownership and control over means of production. Box 3.2 Working class. Marx and Engels could, however, foresee the victory of the world class which was struggling against the capitalistic class. There are several other issues that are discussed by Marx and Engels, especially in the context of capitalistic society life exploitation, theory of surplus value, alienation, and the revolutionary potential of the working class. With the victory of working class, Marx and Engels could foresee the emergence of the socialist society, which would be the society without any class, and finally coming on the communist society. In the writing of Marx, we can see a lot of clarity of thought, new interpretations about society, progressive ideology, and a call for the emancipations of people in general. Although Marx has written extensively, his ideas have been coherent in all as well as precise. The importance of his idea and its application has been important to such an extent that almost no sociological interpretations of the existing reality was considered complete until and unless it has examined the phenomenon from the Marxist perspective. After understanding the theoretical formulation of Karl Marx, we shall try to know about the contribution of yet another scholar, namely Max Weber. 3.6 Weberian Ideology. Max Weber, 1864 to 1920, was a prominent sociologist from Germany who belonged to the era of classical period in sociology. Max Weber is known in sociology for his brilliant writings on a variety of topics. Max Weber gave a new direction to sociology, to which he offered different as well as a new way of thinking and research. His ways of thinking and analysis were different from Auguste Comte and Émile Durkheim. In our opinion, Max Weber presented his ideas, which are basically concerned with the German sort of understanding but still reflecting the European and the Western flavor. Max Weber has written on a variety of topics from social action to bureaucracy, and also contributed in the vital areas like methodology of social sciences. Although Max Weber attempted to define sociology in his own terms and ways, certain formulations made by him, like Western Hill, still require clarifications. Sociologists are still struggling with the idea of how exactly to proceed on the lines of thought developed by Max Weber. Reflections and Actions outline the ideologies of Max Weber. What are the commonalities in these sociologists? How to go for experimentation with some of the formulations developed by Max Weber, like social action, first hand, or phenomenology. It still remains an area where much remains to be understood and subsequently done. However, some success has been achieved, for example, around the conceptions like bureaucracy. Max Weber's concepts of course carry higher values in terms of its theoretical content, but its actual operationalization has largely remained a problematic area. Max Weber, for example, defined sociology as an interpretative understanding of social action. Max Weber continued to speak of social as having two qualities. One, while doing such an action, the actor must take into account the presence of another actor and wholly or partially be guided by it. And two, the actor must attach a subjective meaning to it. Max Weber has also written about the subjectivity versus objectivity issues in the social sciences. His ideas about the importance of worst and ideal type are, are brilliant and excellent in terms of its theoretical value and rigor, but how to make them operational at the practical and empirical level of level still remains a problematic area. On the one hand, the subject sociology has been widely enriched by the writers at the theoretical level, but otherwise not much has been achieved at the experimental level, as Max Weber during his own life worked on different topics without clarifying much on the without clarifying much on the topics on which he himself had worked earlier. However, Max Weber's formulations on the Protestant ethics and its relationship with the rise of capitalism are widely accepted and acclaimed. Max Weber was able to demonstrate in his study that there was a positive relationship between the Protestant ethics and the development of capitalism. We must ensure making before any sort of a sweeping generalization that Max Weber had presented it as a unique case of the context of Western Europe only. In spite of his brilliant idea, Max Weber's work has to some extent remained unexposed due to various reasons. But in spite of all this, there is no doubt that Max Weber's formulations have contributed to a large in the area of developing sociological theories. Thus, after examining the theoretical contribution of some of the classical authors like Auguste Comte, Emile Durkheim, Karl Marx, and Max Weber, here we come to the end of the contributions made by these scholars in the classical era of the development of sociology. After this, we shall attempt to see the contribution made by the sociologists in the contemporary period. The contemporary period of modern sociological theories could be seen as an important departure from its classical period. During the classical period, the central question has been to establish sociology as an independent discipline, but during the contemporary period, the main concern has been not only to come out of that classical image but also to carry on the subject further. During this contemporary period, the scholars tried to learn from some of the previous shortcomings in the works of the scholars who did some research after Durkheim, Weber, and Marx. During this period, learning from the mistakes of the immediate past, taking the inspiration from the works of the classical sociologists, and rebuilding the society have been the main concerns. In this context, it seems relevant to the it seems relevant to mention the names of two important sociologists who have made their significant contribution. Their works have also been accepted and recognized as important ones after the classical period. These two scholars are Talcott Parsons and Robert K. Merton. Although the works of these scholars from the USA have been accepted internationally, but here only some of their important contributions are being discussed. 3.7 Parsons Actions Theory. Talcott Parsons, 1902 to 1979, was an important sociologist from USA who had contributed on the theory of social action, discussed about the action framework of reference and social system, and lately on evolution. His contribution on what he called it agile paradigm and pattern variable schemes are also well known. We shall discuss about them briefly. Talcott Parson have the advantages of receiving several scholars from classical sociology and some of other social scientists as well. He believed that he could present an integrated theoretical point of view where all the formulations of previous social scientists would lead to. His theoretical constructions later integrated the points of view of psychologists like Sigmund Freud, economics like Alfred Marshall, and sociologists like Wilfred Pareto, Emily Durkheim, and Max Weber, to name a few. He also believed that all the contributions made by various social scientists led in one direction to arrive at, or rather converge at one single notion of what he called its social action. Parson also wanted to understand how social and cultural values are interrelated into the personality system. In his later book on the social system, 1950, Parson said that the three essential components of actions are personality system, social system, and cultural system, although each one being a part of action but not being reducible to the other. In yet another work, Working Papers in the Theory of Action, 1953, Talcott Parsons, along with his colleagues like Robert Bales and Edward Shills, has explained about what he called it the agile paradigm. According to refers to adaptation of G to goal attainment, I to integration, and L to latency. Thus, agile paradigm developed by the person provided him much higher respect as he ascended towards the formulation of sociological theory at a much higher level. His another important theory formulation has been what he called it the pattern variable scheme. It suggests that either an individual or a community as an actor has important choices to make against two polar opposite categories. For example, whether an individual or community in general promote as ascription or achievement, alternative universalism or particularism. Talcott Parsons has referred to 5 sets of such alternative choices, although within these 5 sets of choice some of mutations and combinations could also be made out. For example, from the earlier refers choices mentioned here, it could be ascertained whether the pockets made are of the unjournalist achievement or alternatively particularly ascription sort of orientations. A detailed discussion on these issues would be seen in his book The Social System 1951. As stated earlier, Talcott Parson has also written on medical profession and theories of evolutionism. In general, the theories of Parson are also seen as his contribution to developing the theories of functionalism. But regarding the theories developed by him, several scholars from the Western societies as well as from elsewhere have expressed the opinion that his formulations were difficult to understand, and there is a need to present it all in the same simpler form. There is another criticism which is associated with his work. It has been stated by several scholars that the work of Talcott Parsons are too much theoretical in nature. Sometimes they appear as grand theories and generally have a very little to do with the existing life of today or with the empirical reality. Agreeing with all such criticism, that is true that person theoretical formulations might appear difficult to comprehend, might not refers to the empirical material, but nonetheless they would be considered as important contribution in the views of the present author. Such theoretical formulations are required in sociology, and the learners of sociology must attempt to comprehend such religious materials. Talcott Parsons himself clarified that his work had remained concerned with the task of providing theoretical schemes only. Accordingly to him, then it remained the task of some other scholars or sociologists to verify and test his theories. But in orders for sociological to grow as a subject, it was necessary to strike a balance between the theoretical formulations and factual informations. Among sociologists, namely Robert K. Martin, has tried to move exactly in that direction. His contribution to sociological theory are discussed in the following paragraphs. Box 3.3, Martin's contributions. Robert K. Martin, 1910, another prominent sociologist from USA, had tried to strike a reasonable and balance between theory and fact. He was somehow convinced that neither theory nor fact alone would suffice to move in the desired direction. Basically, he argued to the develop search in methodology in such a way that it also only included a meaningful balance between theory and fact, but also attempted to improve the quality of both. For example, on the one hand, Martin never accepted the formulation of his predecessor sociologists, as such as numerous occasions he has tried to make corrections in the writings of various scholars including Radcliffe, Brown, Malinowski, Robert K. Merton, who attempted to rebuild and formulate functional theory, has identified several mistakes committed unknowingly by earlier scholars, and later he attempted to reconstruct functional theory. Robert K. Merton family believed that the whole of functional theory would not be abandoned or discarded because some of the mistakes were committed by some of the contributors to it at the earlier stages. His approach was to learn from the mistake, identify them, try to remove them, and make functional theory as a viable approach for research and investigation in sociology. Regarding social research, he explained it as an interplay between the theory and facts. Merton's view on social theory would be found in his book Social Theory and Social Structure, 1968. His views on the functional theory could also be seen in the same book. While reconstructing functional theory, Merton has referred to three postulates. 1. The postulate of functional unity of society. 2. The postulate of universal functionalism. And 3. The postulate of indispensability. He later suggested that such postulates would, which once upon a time guided the work of some earlier sociologists, were no longer necessary. Additionally, Merton has explained about that what he called it middle range theories and its necessities in the contemporary period. Merton has also clarified in detail about what he called its reference group theory. In this way, could see that in his own way, Robert K. Merton tried to build up the much required ground and created the environment for the development of sociology as a scientific discipline. From the above discussion, it is now clear that both Talcott Parson as well as Robert K. Merton made great efforts to carry forward the discipline of sociology, and in this endeavor they were quite successful. 3.8 Recent advances in sociological theories. Recent advances that were made in sociology are quite important and meaningful. Besides the work of Auguste Comte, Emily Durkheim, A.R. Radcliffe, Brown, Malinowski, Talcott Parson, and Robert K. Merton, which were mainly influenced by and to a large extent remained concerned with the philosophy of positivism. There was another stream of thought emerging out during the same period. The development of sociology has witnessed, apart from the philosophical background of positivism, another stream of thought initiated and encouraged by the German sociologists like Max Weber. Reflections and Action 3.2 Provide an outline of recent advances in sociological theories. Write down your answer in your feedback. It was Max Weber who defined sociology as an interpretative understanding of social action. Max Weber initiated the debate on why the elements of subjectivity, subjective understanding, and Western should be included in sociology. Max Weber, never impressed by the formulation centered around positivism, undertook which a new direction to be formulations in sociological theory. In fact, the whole debate centered around the issue of subjectivity versus objectivity has initiated and inspired by Max Weber. In fact, sociology as a subject has been strengthened by the efforts made by Max Weber. Here a reference to only two such new areas of research, namely phenomenology and ethnomethodology, shall be made. These two topics represent the main area concerned with the recent advancement made in sociological research. Two other topics requires a mention here as they have emerged in the recent times. They are postmodernization and globalization. We hope that at various stages of learning sociology, all such concepts shall be discussed. Although sociological theories initially developed to strengthen the subject and established it as a core discipline in itself, but with the advancement of certain perspectives clearly emerged in the progress. Here a difference shall be made to only such perspective which have had a direct bearing upon the development of sociology. Sometimes the terms like theories and perspectives have made used interchangeably also. Some of the popular perspective of development in sociology are known as functional perspective, conflict perspective, exchange perspective, and symbolic perspectives. Conflict perspective, exchange perspective, and symbolic interactionist perspective. Although several scholars in one or another way have made associated neither perspective, but here only those thinkers shall be mentioned whose name has generated familiar to us. The name of Emily Durkheim and Robert K. Merton have been associated with the function perspectives. Karl Marx represented the conflict papers. B. Malinowski discussed the material related to the exchange perspective, wherever Herbert Böhmer discussed about symbolic interactionist perspective. Here it might be advised that while discussing about sociological theories, it would be relevant to keep in mind the role of thinkers as well as that of various perspectives to which they were associated. 3.9 The Lessons of Paradigm. It was who first suggested that development within a discipline, especially science, is not a gradual process but in fact takes place quite suddenly. Hence, Kuhn's books entitled The Structure of Scientific Revolution, Kuhn calls these sudden charges as paradigm shifts. According to Kuhn, science, by extension social science, undergoes its process in three phases which are discernible. 1. Pre-scientific phase, normal science, paradigm shift. In the initial phase, theories of social explanation are incomplete and competing with one another. At some point, one of the theories establishes itself with bringing in the phase of normal science, in which phase a single theory or a set of theories emerge dominant, which calls paradigm. When there is a paradigm shift in the situation is one where the previous theories have proved to be redundant. For Kuhn, this is a natural process and it repeats itself over time as the new and established theories themselves became incomplete as knowledge expands. At this point, the solution lies in modifying the theories or to abandon them or another set of dominant or competing theoretical explanation which offer more complete and better explanation for both science, social science, and worldview as whole. We can give an example of paradigm shift by referring to Copernicus, who pointed out that it was the earth that revolved around the earth rather than the sun revolving around the earth as a Ptolemy's position. Copernicus gained adherence to his views with scientific data to prove them. A sudden shift in terms of theories, concept, and perspective emerged with a great speed, and there was a paradigm shift. A new theoretical explanation emerges and establishes itself, ushering in the new set of theories and perspectives. Another example of paradigm shift occurred when Einstein's theory of relativity replaced Newton's theory of gravity. We must point that according to the paradigm shift implies a rather drastic, if not total, replacement of the previously established theories of science and social science. In short, the earlier theories are non-comparable in the shift is total. The way the employs language is used, the development of new concepts, words, and meanings is part of paradigm shift. So are norms, values, and mores. To put it differently, a paradigm shift implies a new view of the world, its perception, perspective, and overall studies of the world. Community charges with a great speed. In the era of globalization, which witnesses the post-modern paradigm shift, in which The local context is considered to be the focus of study, and the consideration of general mega theories is not considered either wise or practical. Thus, the concept of paradigm has two aspects to it. The first is that which engulfs the whole and subsumes it various parts in subsets. It comprises all the procedures of science and social science. This is a global paradigm. At the second level, we find there are theories and practices which bolster the existing paradigm of the society globe. We must clarify it here that although some efforts have been put into make sociology a distinct, independent, and scientific discipline by some great scholars indeed, but the sociological theories thus produced have also been challenged on several grounds. This once again highlights the scientific nature of sociology, where every theory can be put into test and liable to be rejected if found wrong. Thus, in sociological theories, as in other sciences as well, as there is nothing like an eternal or a universal truth that remains as a truth under all the conditions and at every moment of time. Sociological theories should also not be confused with some like religious or metaphysical assertions, nor sociological theories are comparable to the theological guidelines to be followed. Sociological theories have come out of such problems, and the challenges faced by them today are of another nature, and most of them are of scientific type. And in order to achieve that scientific nature, sociology has traveled a long path since the writings of Auguste Comte, who had established it as a positive science. The first challenges to the sociological theories has come from the huge amount of data that have been generated throughout the world, especially after the World War II. For example, data generated in the area of demography has tied to several new innovations at the theoretical level. Similarly, data concerning human development index has helped in making transactional comparisons. The second challenge to sociological theory has come from the process of changing that are taking shape at various levels of society. To put it in simple words, it could be said that the process of social change keep on going on society independently of the fact whether the sociologists study them or not. In fact, in the contemporary world, the process of social change are not only complex in nature, but they are taking shape at such a faster space today. As a result of it, many times sociologists are now actually in a position to study them as all. There are several such phenomena which require some serious sociological studies, like for example the consequences of AIDS and that of terrorism. Much remains to be done in these areas. The third challenges to the sociological theories came when society at large had undergone some significant periods of time. These important periods include the end of the World War II, end of the colonial rule at the various places in the world, and the emergence of various independent nations or state. The sociological theory have had to accommodate itself. The sociological theories have had to accommodate itself several times when such important changes were taking shape in the world. The fourth challenge to sociological theory has come due to some misconceptions about sociology as a subject that is basically meant to solve the current problems of society. In fact, sociology is quite capable of solving the problems of society too, but so far it has kept itself limited up to their scientific study only. But at the level of response to some of these problems and challenges faced, sociologists have attempted to address some of them. As a consequence of the efforts of the sociologists, we have seen the emergence of certain theoretical formulations centered around the conceptions like rationality, postmodernism, modernism, like rationality, postmodernism, globalization, and civil society. At the level of sociological theory, intellectuals and academicians from the subject have also responded meaningfully on the topics like democracy, socialism, and secularism. Sociologists, to some extent, though their writings have made their presence felt in the area of the reconstructions of society. 3.10 Conclusion. We have seen what comprises a theory and what a paradigm means. We have taken an analysis of classical sociological theories and seen how they enunciated the law of the three stages: Marxian ideology, Weberian ideology, Parson's actions theory, and some recent advancement in sociological theory. Finally, we turn to the concept of paradigm and explain what it means in terms of the intellectually violent stuffs in the dominance of the theories, which have been termed paradigm shifts by Thomas Kuhn. We have adequately indicated the subject to which we addressed ourselves to. 3.11 Further reading. Edgar Benn, 1978, Western Marxism, An Introduction to Santa Monica, Caliph Goodyear. Alfred Robert R. and Friedland Roger, 1985, Powers of Theory, Capitalism, the State and Democracy, Cambridge University Press. Blumer, Herbert, 1959, What is Wrong with the Social Theory, in H. Blumer. Symbolic Interactions, England, Eaglewood Cliffs, N.J. Prentice Hall. Thomas, 1962, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, Chicago University of Chicago Press. Ritzer, George, 1996, Sociological Theory, U.S., McGraw-Hill. This is the end of the chapter. This is the end of the Unit 3, named Theory and Paradigm. Next we will look into the Unit 4.